When it comes to understanding our modes of behaviour, I really want to start things off by talking a little bit about our own internal critics. From a multiplistic personality perspective, these are probably the most important parts for us to understand, as they're usually the hardest parts for us to accept. Practicing unconditional self-acceptance starts with the basic principle that there's no such thing as a bad part within our personality system, and all parts are welcome, no matter how they're currently behaving. Yeah, it's definitely true that some of our parts behave in ways that we might not want them to because it's an ineffective thing to do given who we want to be in those areas of life that are important to us. At the same time, we have to accept each part of our personality as a necessary and important aspect of our system so that they can become part of the internal conversation rather than acting out in the external world in ways that cause problems in a basic attempt to have a particular point of view that they want to be heard and understood. This compassionate way of listening to our own parts is extremely applicable when it comes to our own internal critics. They are an integral part of our personality system, and actually, if they weren't present, we probably wouldn't survive very long. They hold all of our judgments and criticisms, and they basically let us know when we're doing something wrong or when we need to watch out for someone else's behaviours because they probably seem to be a bit untrustworthy. The problem with our internal critics is that they learn their communication style at a really early age because they pretty much internalize the language that we were exposed to growing up. Now, this can be a direct representation of the words that we were exposed to, or it can be a child's interpretation of the language we heard and the way we felt in the environment at that time of our lives. If your critics have developed an unhealthy way of speaking to you, the result is usually an activation of guilt and shame in our system, even if there are no values that have been compromised to activate these feelings. At the same time, our critics are usually the most misunderstood parts of our personality system, as their actual intention is to motivate us in some way. They're trying to communicate in the only way they know how that there is something that we're doing or a way that we're being that we need to pay attention to in the immediate circumstance that we're in. How we tend to react to the language of our own internal critics is also a really important thing to understand. It's actually the case that many people don't even realize that they have control of this debilitating internal narrative. If we use the skills of DBT, specifically mindfulness and stop, we can slow things down in a way that helps us listen to what's happening within our personality system. When things are slowed down this way, we can learn how to recognize the presence of our critics and use the other skills of DBT emotion regulation to help us remove the rigid perspective we have for the behavioral responses we simply must use to deal with the emotional experience our critics have left us with. Now, some people just comply with their internal critics and give in to whatever it is that they're trying to say, while many people push back against their narrative by resisting the story they're trying to push. Whichever category we fall into, and basically either way is fine, when we hear our critics tell us that there's something we should be doing or that there's something that we should stop doing, our emotional child parts react in the exact same way that they did in the past, or the way that they wanted to react when they heard these critical messages the first time around. It's really important to understand things from this particular perspective as we move to work on identifying them. In essence, we need to hear the narrative of our own internal critics, appreciate their purpose in our system, and validate their point of view. Parts will never be open to the re-education process without feeling heard and understood. When the critics feel validated, it opens the possibility of actually turning them into internal coaches instead. The only way this is possible is if we're open-minded about their presence in our thoughts and we can appreciate the reasons that they're trying to draw our attention to something. That way we can try to educate them about how to change the language they use to build internal motivation instead of activating guilt and toxic shame. Now, once we've got an understanding for the different parts of our personality and we recognize the schema that they're responding to, we will engage with the use of something called the Raven skill in combination with DBT's planning ahead to build mastery, which together are designed to educate and reframe our relationship and our experiences with each and every one of our parts. Before we can do that though, we have to work on identifying the presence of the different internal critics within our personality system. Now, there are two different types of internal critic that we can focus on, both of which can show up either on their own or they can work in tandem with one another. In fact, we can even have the experience of critics judging other critics. At the bottom of the website page that's connected to this particular video, you'll find links to information and worksheets designed to help identify the critics in your own personality system. When you can, go to each page and work through the videos and the questions in the worksheets slowly. Take your time to identify the red flags that indicate the presence of the critics within your system. Use the skills of mindfulness and stop when you feel their activation. Then, once you know what each one sounds and feels like and you can notice them in real time, develop the Raven exercise you need to re-educate them and plan ahead to build mastery for using this skill. If you've got an opinion on this or anything else to do with your own internal critics, different modes of behaviour, schema therapy in general, or the integration of DBT and our understanding of the multiplistic personality, leave a comment in the chat. I'd really like to hear your point of view. If you want to know more about the things we talk about on this YouTube channel and the connected website, come join the conversation in the live online meetings that I personally facilitate each week on Zoom. I'll leave some links in the description below. And as always, if you like the content of this video, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and turn on those notifications to get all the latest from me and the Liberation Place. I hope this video gave you some insight for how we begin to work with our own internal critics. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Take care, be safe, and be well.